Hello, AU Arts, and welcome to your presentation about branding and marketing for creatives. That is you. I'm so excited to be doing this presentation for you because not only do I get to talk about a topic that I'm so passionate about, but I have been an avid fan of the show and sale for so many years. I've got pieces in my office, I've got pieces at home, and it's really nice to be on the other side and to be helping you folks to develop your own brand and to help yourselves market for show and sale, but also afterwards for years to come. I also wanted to give a little shout out to RBC, woo, our sponsor, because without RBC, I wouldn't be here today, and you also wouldn't get these fabulous workshops for you to improve your skill sets as an artist and also a little mini entrepreneur. A little bit about myself and why I am a legitimate human to be talking with you right now. Hello, my name is Lana Rogers. I am the founder and director at Gentle Line Communications. We are a marketing and communications agency here in Calgary, and we have been around for about 8 years, and our sole client roster is really about supporting the local small businesses, the underdogs, the ones who maybe don't get as much attention from folks. We're really about kind of supporting those young and up and coming artists and creators. I have been working in the industry for almost 20 years, if you can believe it. I was in a seat just like you right now. I was a student, I was going to the university, and I finished my degree. I ended up working for an agency for 8 years and then started my own company. So I really understand the entrepreneurial side of, maybe that pressure that you're feeling right now to market your business. And then I also understand those hard skills that you need to market yourself. I'm going to give you a little bit of both as we go through the presentation today. I wanted to highlight a few of our clients that we've worked with, and just to kind of get your brain set into, what we're going to be talking about and use some examples because you can probably see yourselves in many of these folks highlighted here. First and foremost, I wanted to touch on the fact that we have had the honor of working with a couple of galleries here in Calgary. Trepanier Bear is a gallery that we worked with a few years ago. And not only were we brought in to help them with some of their PR in the pandemic, because no one could come into the gallery. So as you can see, a lot of it turned digital. But really, we were brought in to help them bring in a new audience group. Trepanier Bear has been around for so long, and they have this really great roster of artists. They have a really great roster of buyers, but what they've noticed that the artists and buyers were growing together, and they were starting to miss out on harnessing relationships with folks like me, younger buyers that are maybe not at our earning potential, but we will be eventually. And they wanted to be able to grow with them so that they would purchase over time. So we created a targeted strategy specifically that went after engaging a younger audience. On the flip side here, we're currently working with Norberg Hall, which is another gallery in Calgary. And they're almost the complete opposite of Trepanier Bear. They've already done a great job of exposing themselves to a younger buyer, and they are consistently harnessing that relationship. So for them, it's about how can we continue to have more touch points with this current target audience, but how can they bring in new audience groups that are looking to purchase from up and coming artists. Shannon and Jarvis have done such a great job of building a roster of artists that aren't really known yet, artists like you, and have really been able to kind of see their talents and then build them over time. So you can see that with these two galleries, even though they're located in Calgary, they actually cater to two completely different audience groups, which is something that we will touch on here in the presentation. I also had the honor of working on Look, which was the first fundraising event for contemporary Calgary. And I really loved this event because it just goes to show that you're currently living and being educated in a city that really cares about the contemporary arts. And this is another organization that is really bolstering folks like you and, wanting to make sure that artists are being seen in the city. So that was a really fun event to work on. From a kind of musician standpoint, I've been able to work with Ruben in the Dark. And whenever he cruises through Calgary, we help him with all of his public relations. Note, yes, I said public relations. I am going to talk about that in the presentation. And then last but not least, I'm sure you're all familiar with Katie Green. She is an amazing muralist from Calgary who has really now reached global recognition. She does murals all over the world and really has honed in on her proprietary process. She has such a unique process and is able to demonstrate how that can add value to certain clients. I'm going to talk about Katie quite a bit here within the presentation and use her as an example because I see a lot of you have similarities with the art like Katie. Okay, we're here to really talk about what is the difference between branding, marketing, and public relations. And if you've noticed, I've thrown in public relations because I get questions around this all of the time. What's the difference between marketing and PR? So just adding in a little bit of a snippet here and really, what is the definition of all of these? How do they all fit? How do they all relate to you, especially as you're embarking on the show and sale? And how do you need to really have a better understanding of these so that you can better show up for the show and sale? I did want to start with a little bit of a perception though, because there's a lot of kind of mixed feelings and mixed definitions on how everyone really perceives these terms. What I really wanted to point out is that it's okay to have your own definition. It's okay for you to maybe have a stigma about it. And the reason why I like this kind of mystery perception is I believe that great marketing should be an enigma. It should be mysterious. It should be something where you're really unsure of where you saw something, but you know that you love it. An example is I met a ceramicist recently at AU Arts, and I'm so excited to find out more about her work. I don't even really know what her work looks like yet, but all I know is that one interaction that I had with her really sparked me to look deeper. And it is really about building that relationship. So really kind of in summary with the perception is it's okay to keep it a mystery and not have to do things by the book. But what I'm going to lead you through today are some frameworks on how you can really make your own branding and marketing your own enigma so that people are pulled in to who you are and what you do, and you're not pushing salesy messages at them. So let's start at the top. Let's start with the definition of marketing. And marketing in its simplest terms is how you, as a creator, are delivering your brand story on all of the multiple media channels that are out there, but you're only delivering your message on the channels that resonate with your target audience. And if you think about, what a media channel is, because I'm going to be using this term quite interchangeably throughout the presentation, a media channel is every single platform or any single way that you are receiving information or that you're communicating with an audience group. Currently, right now, I'm on this kind of talking video thing called Loom. This is considered a media channel. This is how I'm giving you the information. You may have received this presentation through your email. Email is a platform where you're exchanging information. So if you can think about it, there's so many different media channels out there. There's so many different ways that we're receiving information. And so we really like to organize them into segments. So this is where this trusty little diagram comes into play here. We like to organize the channels based on the different quadrants that exist. Now, I'm going to go through each of these just really, really high level. If you have your workbook, your worksheets in front of you too, you can find the full marketing model with all of the media channels on that as well. But I'm going to give just kind of a brief high level here to get you in the mindset of how this works. We're going to start at the top with owned media. And owned is anything that you as a brand, as a creator, you own. And you control those messages and you control the flow of communication. And we're going to get into a little bit more detail into owned, but I really want, if you're going to focus on a quadrant, owned is probably your most important right now. Earned is when you take that owned content created and then you have a third party that is voluntarily writing about you, talking about you, because they feel like your story is going to resonate with their audience. An example of this would be global news covering the show and sale because they know that their readers, their listeners are going to be interested in attending, but they've done it for free because they know that that story is topical for their audience. Shared is also going to be an important quadrant for you. And shared can be considered the distribution of content from an organic source of promotion of your brand, organically. So sharing is really where I think the magic happens. Remember the enigma analogy? That could be considered anything like word of mouth. Maybe you've posted something on your social media and someone else has shared that on their stories. It's how other people are sharing your information. And paid in its simplest format is when you exchange dollars to have your story heard. So examples of these would be like paid digital ads, when you throw in some dollars to get a boosted ad. I would say we don't want to spend a lot of time in paid, especially as you are more of an emerging artist, an emerging brand. So we're really going to talk about the owned and shared aspects of it. Another way that you can think about the marketing model is if you think about it as a human body. Think of it as there's so many different parts in your body, and all of these parts work together to keep you alive. You've got your heart, you've got your kidneys. Consider all of those the media channels. And then a marketer steps in, like myself, and I'm now diagnosing. So consider me the doctor. I'm the one that can go, oh yes, I see something's wrong with the heart. What do we need to do to keep that heart pumping? So I understand how every single media channel works and how it needs to be related to your target audience groups. So when we look at, bringing brand and public relations into the mix, remember how I mentioned I want you to focus on owned and shared? That's really those areas where branding and PR make up the quadrants. The definition of branding, I like to bucket it under the owned media channel quadrant because it is you as an artist and how you show up in the world and what your stories are and how you control things. So an example of pieces that you'll find under the owned content that classify as branding would be your visual brand identity, your messaging, how you communicate. If you look at my slide right now, you are witnessing the Gentle Lion brand. We've got our name here. We've got a color palette. So the purple and green is used everywhere. So when people see purple and green, they're going to be reminded of Gentle Lion. We've also got messages here. These are how we describe what we do, our processes, and how we work with folks. So you are seeing brand here as a whole. If we go back to the anatomy analogy, I would consider branding to be your heart. You can't live without your heart. Your heart needs to constantly keep beating. So your brand is the foundation. It's what keeps going. It's consistent and it keeps beating time and time again. And there are things that will feed into your heart, and there's things that you can do to keep your heart really healthy. And that's where we would get into something like public relations. You'll notice that the star for PR is in between earned and shared because it is. It takes both of those areas and combines them. An example here would be you as an artist have such a great story about your brand and your process, and Global wants to cover you. They have come to the show and sale. They want to talk to you specifically. And by you being on Global News, you've now created a ripple effect of brand awareness. You could also consider this right now, me talking to you, as a form of public relations for my company. AU Arts was familiar with the Gentle Lion brand. They really loved what I stood for. They really loved my process. And they invited me to talk here and to provide you with this workshop. This workshop is now going to get in front of many students. You're now going to be aware of who I am, and you're probably going to follow me on social media. And you're going to keep coming back to my brand because you're interested in what I do. So really, public relations is about building that brand loyalty and that trust and that engagement with your audiences. And if you think about our anatomy analogy again, like I'd mentioned, public relations would be something if, what you're doing to continuously pump blood into your heart. I'm going to break down these segments even further, and I want to give you all of the examples of what types of kind of tactics exist under each of these segments of the integrated marketing model. Like I had mentioned, the full snapshot is on page 7 of your workbook, but I wanted to really just give you some examples under each quadrant because, as you can see, there's a lot of them. Owned, I'm going to spend a little bit more time here because you, as a new artist building your brand, this is going to be so, so important for you to get this set up before show and sale. So as you can see, branding is these kind of top bullet points here. These are everything that you own, that you control on how you are showing up in the world. And I've got some exercises on how we can craft each of these for you individually. But then you'll notice I've got some different platforms here that exist. We've got website, newsletters, email marketing. These are all third-party platforms that you can control. So with your website, you can put your color palette, your name, your story on there, and you can change it and you can tweak it. And what's great is places like Squarespace and Webflow all provide you with these frameworks so that you're not having to start these from scratch. I would say, given where you're at, you don't need to have a full website, but a landing page is a really great place for people to land and find your brand. A newsletter. You can control all of the content that is showing up in that newsletter on a monthly basis. You can design it. You can control how many, if you're going to have some video content. And on the side, this is where we start to see the combo of having some of our channels kind of intercollide. And the reason why this is happening is, if you can think about it, when I started working in marketing, oh my gosh, 20 years ago, I was faxing press releases. Social media did not exist. Now I can DM a journalist a story on Instagram. So as we really develop and become more innovative, there's more and more channels that keep showing up. You might think this is a good idea, but the more channels, the more confusion there is. And I will get into that. So it's not about being on every single channel. It's about really being strategic and selecting the ones that work for you. So I like to bucket social media into this kind of collaborative, owned and shared area. And I know a lot of you are considering which channel to be on for social media, and I will get into that in a bit here. Earned, just as a quick refresher, is where you've got the third party who is voluntarily talking about you. As an emerging artist, I would say I would not concentrate on this as much as possible. I think you should have it as, I want you to be aware of it because this is where I want you to go to. And here are some examples of more kind of earned channels. So like I'd mentioned, sending out a press release. Leah, who is your communications lead for Show and Sale, she's going to make a press release. She's going to send it to all of the different news outlets in the hopes that they'll cover it on the radio, on an online blog, and maybe someone is going to talk about it at a speaking engagement. I like to consider podcasts as a form of earned media, as well as when you get an award, or if there is an influencer on social that is just naturally talking about you because they love your work so much. I bucket some word of mouth in here too. Like I'd mentioned, earned is a lot harder to get. It's really, a place where we're always striving to be. So just keep this kind of at the back of your mind. Shared is how your content is being distributed organically. Here's where the enigma steps in. And here is a slide that I really, really want you to focus on as well. And in order for shared to take place, you need to have owned really, really dialed. You need to have your brand dialed, your messages, and who you are, your artist statement. Because once that's figured out, you'll notice that there's so many different ways for people to share your story. It could be me just talking about you, like I had met Kendra. I told someone about her because I had such a great conversation with her. Maybe there's a like-minded artist who you can partner with and cross-collab and share each other's stories because you have the similar brand values. When people go online and give a review, that is a way of them telling other people how great or how bad their experience was. Referral, so me going, oh my gosh, you need to buy this piece from Norberg Hall because I had such a great experience there. And social shares. So if I start following you on social media, I see your work, I share it with my audience. That is another example. When you get into shared and paid, the combo, I like to classify these as incentivized referrals. So you're actually giving them something to talk about you. So there's either like a money or a gift exchange. And last but not least on our integrated marketing model wheel would be paid. I don't want you to spend a lot of time here because I don't want you to be paying dollars. This is something for you to consider kind of post Show and Sale as ways to keep your brand top of mind to your target audience. Examples here would be digital ads, Facebook, Instagram. When you boost them, you can pay to have a press release on the wire. You can pay to sponsor something to have recognition, aka hello RBC. Attending a trade show or a conference or an event, like paying to be an artist at Market Collective. Those would be some examples of paid. But like I mentioned, I don't want you to spend a ton of time here. There's a lot of channels. There's so many of them, and you're probably going, okay, what do I do now? Do I just close my eyes and point and hope for the best? Or do I populate my story on every single channel out there because that means that everyone's going to see me? Those are both wrong. You're not going to go on every single media channel because you're going to dilute your brand. You cannot be everything to everyone. And I don't want you to guess because then you'll probably be missing the mark. Don't use the marketing media channel as a dartboard. We're going to get into how that can work for you. And this is where we get into our exercises. So if you've got your workbook, you can open that up, and I'm going to lead you through how you are going to be able to craft your own brand story and create your own 30, 60, 90-day launch plan for show and sale. Number one, setting goals. A lot of folks really miss this when they are really setting up anything. Because if you don't have a goal in mind, if you don't have a destination in mind, how do you know exactly what the journey entails? How do you know exactly what you need to do to make it to that destination? Goals are really, really important. The exercise for you to go through, and oh my goodness, this page is not properly set up, but that's okay. As you can see, there is the exercise that is on page 2. Sorry about the formatting issues here, I apologize. And what I want you to do is I want you to think of these different timestamps and envision where you want to be. Now, I know these are pretty big timestamps for you, so what you can do is also in your workbook, add one that is about a month out. So what you're doing to get to show and sale, which is pretty much a month from now. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to think of these different timestamps for you and answer the question for each timestamp. So question number 1, where do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself once you've arrived at show and sale? Where do you see yourself 6 months from now, which is after show and sale? Where do you see yourself a year from now? And where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And with the 5 years, I want you to dream big. I want you to think big, because we're going to come back to why we need to have your 5-year goals. My second question to you, how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel when the online portal for show and sale launches and people are experiencing your brand for the first time? How do you want to feel afterwards? How do you want to feel 5 years from now? And then my third question is, what is the impact that you, as a creative, as an artist, want to have? What is that impact? So list as many goals as possible under each of these timestamps. I will say this exercise should probably take you about 20 minutes to do, take some breaks, but I really want you to dream big and think about where you see yourself at each of these timestamps. Next, we're going to talk about core beliefs. And yes, I've snuck in an added exercise here. So I know there's the 4 fundamentals. I've actually created 2 that go under your brand story. So now we're going to explore 2 exercises about your brand story. And the first one is deciding on what your core beliefs are. Now, your core beliefs are really those intangible beliefs that define and motivate you. They're the ones that keep you on track. And I love to use the bowling ball analogy here. You can think of your core beliefs / brand values as those blow up bumpers that are on the gutter of the bowling alley when you went there as a kid. Remember when you went there as a kid and they had them in so that your bowl would never go into the gutter? Think about your brand as the bowling ball. And as you throw the bowling ball down the alley, it's eventually maybe going to veer off into the gutter. And we don't want your brand to go into the gutter. That means you're veering off course and not staying true to yourself. So the brand value or the core belief is going to bump it back in and bump you back in course. These are really, really important for you to have. And I'm adding this in because these are something that are actually internal. Your core beliefs should not be put on your website. There's something that you need to live and breathe by. I like to say that, actions speak larger than words. So it's all about creating these and living and breathing by them. So core beliefs translated into brand values. And this is on page 3 and 4 of your workbook on how you can create your own brand values. This exercise is quite timely. It can take, I would say, up to an hour. So make sure you've got an hour set aside. And I'm going to lead you through how Gentle Lion, how we came up with our brand values. So first and foremost, I want you to envision 2 to 3 brands that you aspire to be, or that inspire you, that you love. Now, these can be, brands within your industry. It could be another artist. It could be a person. It could be a brand that's not even related to your industry. Just think of something that you truly love and you are really bought in, and you really are consistently involved in, you're excited to hear about what they have to say. So at Gentle Lion, our 2 brands that we really loved. Number 1, Robin, who's a musician, a Swedish musician, and number 2 was The Cut, which is like a syndicated information source of the New York Times. These are very, very different brands, and you can see that they're not marketing companies. Next, we like to think of all of the qualities and characteristics that describe those brands. I want you to list every single quality. Start with one brand first. When I think about Robin, I think about someone that has integrity. She's extremely creative. She's unapologetic. She's real. She's raw. She's subversive. List all of those qualities. Now we're going to do the same thing for The Cut. And when I think of The Cut, I think of a publication that is topical, truthful. It's informative. It's got a lot of data in there. It's methodical. Write those ones out. And now it's all about picking the top 3 to 5 words that you resonate with the most. And a way to start nailing them down is by taking all of the words and word clouding them into similar buckets. So finding all of the words that are similar to each other, putting them in a bucket, and then starting to have that process of elimination. Here are Gentle Lion's brand values, and these are our values that you can't find them on our website, but we use them almost every day. I will always reference our brand values if I am indecisive about working with a client. I try to see if they fit within all of these buckets. When we're hiring different folks to work with us, do they demonstrate these brand values? I want you to really kind of get these solidified first, because these are really important as they'll start to lead the rest of your brand story. Now, underneath, and you don't need to go this far, I think the value itself is just really important, but we like to define ours further. So there was a lot of words in our word clouds that we didn't want to get rid of. So we ended up putting these into more definitive explanations of the brand value. The second part in crafting your brand story is really finding out, what is your story? Who are you? What makes you unique? And this is where we really love to use the Simon Sinek exercise. I'm pretty sure, some of you are familiar with it, because thinking about your story on the spot can be really, really difficult. It can feel very overwhelming. This brand story exercise breaks it out into bite-sized pieces for you so that you can eventually put it all together like Mad Libs. We like to break out the what, the how, and the why. So in your exercise sheet, let's start with the what first. And the what is the offering that you, as the creator, provide. And I want you to think of 1 or 2 words and list as many as possible. What do you provide? Are you an artist? Are you a sculptor? Are you a photographer? What is that offering? List them out. The how is what you do, how you do it. What are the steps, the processes that set you apart? And if you can think about it, I mean, there are a ton of photographers out there in the world, but what is it that you do differently? Do you have a different technique? Is there a different way that you are showing up in the world compared to other photographers? Are you using maybe a new process that no one else has thought about? The how is really about the uniqueness of what you do and how you differentiate yourself. Now, the why is really your reason for being, your purpose. And you can go back to your 5-year roadmap and get some ideas, because that is really your why, is why you're showing up, but it's also your vision on where you want to eventually go. Your why is really the beliefs and the motivators that brought you here today and what keep you going. I put some examples in here for you just to get your wheels turning a little bit more. I've put gentle lions in here. I've put Katie's in here. I'm not going to show you what they are, but you can see these examples of how you can start to list out your what, your how, your why. So you can see that, really defining your offering first for your what, whether you're a painter, a sculptor, a muralist, really defining that. And then how you do it. Do you have these two different theories? Is it a unique technique? Do you have a proprietary process? And then really your why is why you truly are doing this. Is it because you want to inspire others? Do you want to connect to other communities? Do you really want to honor your ancestors? The why is really innately up to you on how you show up. And now we get to put it all together in a little Mad Lib statement. So you can think about this as your artist statement. And I've used our Gentle Lion brand statement as an example. We advocate for brands that stretch beyond convention because we want a compassionate and equal world that allows for communities to connect and thrive. This is our final statement. So you can see how we got all the way from kind of wordsmithing to the final statement here. Now we need to determine exactly who your audience is. And based on this meme here, we do not want to be everything to everyone. And the reason we don't is because you will dilute your brand. We want you to be niche. We want you to be really, really special. So on page 6 of your workbook, this is where we get to create your audience personas or your avatars. And I like to think about audience as those individuals who are most engaged with your brand and who are excited about your brand. Given show and sale, let's think about the show and sale audience. Who are the ones that are showing up? And Leah already kind of gave me the avatar of who she is. And it's really getting into her mindset. We really need to understand her, because that way we'll know exactly how we can talk with her, how we can communicate with her. The target audience exercise is about stepping out of your body and into that primary group. For this example, I will use the show and sale primary audience avatar. Leah has told me we like to give her a name. Her name is Margaret. Margaret is a baby boomer. She's older. She lives in Myrtle Loop, and she's got a ton of cats, and she loves filling her home with new pieces of art. She is really excited about supporting local artists, and she just can't wait to go to the show and sale every year and tell her friends about all of the amazing pieces that she has purchased. So what is Margaret trying to achieve? I would say she's trying to really fill her house with joy and fill her house with things that inspire her and things that want to allow her to tell a story about where it came from. It's about connecting with that piece within her house. It's not about buying something from HomeSense. She wants to know who was behind that piece that she bought. What are some of the challenges that Margaret might face? Well, I mean, luckily, the show and sale I know is online. I was going to say maybe one of her challenges is that she can't physically get down to it. So having it online is really helpful to her. And maybe um, she doesn't, maybe her budget is quite limited right now. So she has to be very selective around the type of money that she's spending. Now, this is where you need to take your artist statement and relate it to Margaret. So, how does your statement relate to her? How do you relate to her? And how are you solving her problems? So, it's really about getting into the mindset about exactly who Margaret is. I'm going to go a little bit broader here too, because I want us to think post show and sale, because that audience is very, very important to you. It's the audience that resonates with your brand the most. I'm going to use Katie Green as an example here. And I've also given some buckets for you to consider as well. Now, Katie Green is a muralist. So we look at who out there is the ones that are needing her work the most. Where is a mural more susceptible to? Like, where is it being seen? So we're seeing murals on really, really big buildings. Katie recently did the bridge project in the East Village a couple of years ago. So who are the decision makers that are deciding to bring on the Katie Greens of the world? And that's where we look at businesses or a developer or municipality. So I would classify Katie's primary audience as a developer because she is always wanting to put her pieces on a big building, and the decision makers would either be the building owner or the developer in that area. So in Katie's case, if we look at someone like a CMLC, we now step into their mindset and go, well, what is CMLC trying to achieve? Well, with the bridge project, they really needed to have someone come in who had a technique that would uphold where those murals were going. And so Katie's process was really important for them there, on how she could apply her technique and her vision and make sure that it was lasting within the bridge project. And then seeing some of those challenges, Katie was able to go in and help them navigate the challenges of making sure that those pieces were being put up on time, on budget, and then always relating kind of what she does to that audience group. So for you, thinking kind of outside of show and sale, you can start to think about, is your audience, your primary audience, is it a business? Is it someone who is going to sell your work for you? Is it a gallery that's going to represent you? Is it a non-for-profit that will really require your work for them to become more aware in their community? Or is it direct to consumer? Is it someone like me? Is it someone a little bit different than Margaret? And I'm also going to use Katie as my secondary example as well, because primary audience, I like to consider with all of the different audience groups out there. If you were going to take one of them away, if they all of a sudden disappeared, would your brand survive? So for Katie, if all of a sudden developers didn't exist, I'm pretty sure that would hurt her brand quite a bit. So that's why we're going to put them as number one. When you're thinking about your secondary audience, this is someone that is benefiting from your brand, but if you take them away, your business and your brand is still succeeding. So when I was working with Katie, we thought about how are some other different ways that her work could be applied in different formats. And we got brainstorming. So who else would be interested in a mural outside of a developer? Who else would be interested in kind of like these large scale custom watercolor projects? And we were like, well, I bet you some people in their homes would really love these, like a nursery for kids. And we're like, okay, so we could go direct to consumer, or we're like, why don't we go to the interior designers that represent these clients and have these designers advocate for Katie on her behalf and sell her work for her? So you can see how we got a little bit more creative with that secondary audience. And then we broke down her avatar. So Amanda is a real life interior designer in Calgary that we've pitched Katie to, and who's always looking to put Katie's work into her clients' homes. And it's all about, how do we help Amanda solve her problems? And how do we help elevate her brand even further? So now this is where we've considered the secondary audience. So in your workbook, I believe it's on page 6, you can start to build out your different audience avatars. We have had people have as many as 4. I would definitely start with your show and sale audience, your Margarets, and then I would think past show and sale and who that primary group will be. Okay, finally, our last exercise, but the most exciting, because this is where we are now going back to that integrated media model and going, what channels do I use? Remember, we're not using all of them. We're not guessing. How are we doing it? We're looking at every single channel out there. Remember to reference page 2. We're seeing all of these, but how do they relate to those audience groups? Which of these channels are your primary and secondary audience utilizing? Because when we look at the developers, the Kates of the world, and our interior designers, the Amandas of the world, they are not using all of these channels to find their information. On page 8 of your workbook, bloop, clearly put it up there for you, this is where you now get to list all of the media channels where your target audience is resonating with. And I've used our Kates and Amandas of the world as an example. And as you can see, both of them really rely on owned. So they really rely on having your unique story come and meet them and really make them feel a certain way. So brand story is number 1. With Kate, you can see, Kate's probably finding her information more within other business communities. Kate is, quite busy and also is not on all of the social media channels. Yes, she would come to the show and sale to kind of see and check out things. So you definitely want to be present there and have your unique story. Where else might she find you? Well, maybe a friend of hers saw your work and was like, hey, have you considered this artist? Maybe she was on Facebook and someone shared a post of yours that was posted. Kate's probably, going to, like I mentioned, a lot of those business opportunities. So maybe she sees you speaking on a panel or on a podcast. Amanda, on the other hand, a little bit younger and is really, really obsessed with social media. She's on Instagram, she's on TikTok, she's on Pinterest. She has told me she's bought things from a boosted post, from a paid promoted post. She reads Avenue magazine, so she might find you through there. She also attends other events like Market Collective, so maybe a way for you to show up there. So you can see how each audience group has different channels. The same channels are great, but it's just now about building out exactly how your story is showing up on each of these different channels. A simple formula to utilize these 4 essentials: solidify your goals, create your brand story by discovering and mapping out your brand values and your how, what, why. Find out what audiences resonate best with the brand, and then populate the channels. And there is your marketing strategy. To develop it out a little bit further, and knowing that we've got show and sale coming up here, I wanted to give you a little 30, 60, 90 day kind of snapshot here. So what you should be doing leading up to show and sale, what you need to prep. And as you can see, a lot of owned, putting a lot of work into owned first. So making sure you've got your values, your artist statement, having an online portfolio, having a bio is very, very important. People want to know who you are. And then what are maybe one or two of those owned channels that you want to have built out? You don't have to have a full website. You can have a landing page, or maybe you just need to have your Instagram populated. Now, once show and sale has launched, they've seen you online, they've discovered you through show and sale. How are you now capturing them? So they go on your page. We want them to continuously be reminded of you post show and sale. Do you have a call to action where they sign up for a newsletter because they love signing up for newsletters? Are they more prominent on social media? And is your call to action for them to follow you on that social channel? And then something to consider if you are doing an in-person show and sale, do you have postcards with a QR code? And I love QR codes because those are ways that you can kind of change it around, whether it's leading to a website, like a social channel, things like that. It's just a more tangible way for people to get to follow you. Now, post show and sale, now that you've captured them on one of those owned platforms, how are you consistently reminding them that you are here, that you exist? I only want you to pick a couple of these to focus on, but are you sending out a monthly newsletter? Are you updating a monthly blog on your website? With social media, are you, how often are you posting? I would say minimum posting 3 times a week. Are you going to other events? So you can see these are things that you can keep doing post show and sale. Okay, that is it. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. I want to make sure that you do, speaking of QR codes, click on this QR code and take the survey, because once again, this is a survey that is run through RBC, and really by you providing your feedback, they'll be able to create more of these programs for you. So I really encourage you to click on the QR code here. And if you do take the survey, you could be entered to win a $100 gift card. And these are drawn, I think, twice a year. So you can take the survey as much as possible. My call to action for you is to follow Gentle Line Communication so that you can stay up to date on what we're doing in the community. Thank you so much for listening, and best of luck at the show and sale.